It would seem that an iPhone is going to become $3,000. You heard that correctly. Not rupees, not won, not pesos. $3,000. And everyone is gasping. Everyone can't believe it. My goodness, it's going to be as expensive as a Starbucks in an airport. How is this happening? So I'll tell you how it's happening, because it seems most people don't understand basic economics. And I don't blame them, to be honest, because they don't teach it in schools anymore. They enlighten your kids in the way of the LGBTs before they even teach the ABCs, but they fail to try and explain to them basic economic principles. And they're really interesting once you understand them. You see, the United States wasn't always like this. The reason that a lot of manufacturing used to exist in the United States and many other places in the world is because the world wasn't as regulated as it is now. The job of a politician is to make your life harder. The more time passes, the more laws get passed, the more regulations get passed, things like minimum wage, things like worker rights, all these issues that especially leftist politicians are championing, managed to make an iPhone that would cost $1,000 to produce into $3,000. And that's the magic of it, right? The Democrats and even the Republicans are making constant legislation for protecting the environment, for protecting the worker. And then what happens is that the companies simply avoid all of that, bypass all of the regulations by going to foreign nations. Like China, for instance, where the wage is a lot lower. Where if you bribe officials, you can avoid lawsuits. Where you can bypass all of the environmental regulations from the United States. And so the system manages to incentivize companies for just making it somewhere else cheaper and then exporting it back into the United States. And so what this does is that all of the regulation keeps smaller companies down, companies that can't afford to move to China. And so Apple gets less competition. It also raises unemployment because all the people that could have applied to work in an Apple factory now would have to travel to China in order to get a job. And it also makes journalists really smug. Now they can write articles and say, well, you can't bring manufacturing back into the United States because the United States is a country of lazy people. All 350 million of them. You wouldn't be able to find anyone willing to work in an Apple factory. Or they would say stuff like, well, Americans, if they would have worked for less, if they would agree to get a lesser wage, then surely this wouldn't be a problem. When in reality, they can't agree to get a lesser wage. Why? Because America has laws that set a minimum wage. And all these things are supported by the left. Every single one of them. But at the same time, the left doesn't complain when a company goes into another country to bypass all of their regulations and then sells the product back home. But will complain when someone tariffs. Because what does the tariff do? Well, the tariff says, okay, if an Apple phone costs $3,000 to make in the United States, because we have all these laws here that protect human dignity, allegedly, that protect the planet and the environment, allegedly, and you're simply bypassing all of them, right? Like all of us Americans believe that these laws are essential for humanity, and you just bypass every single one of them, even though in many cases the companies themselves lobbied for those laws. Well, sure, you can go somewhere else where a phone costs $1,000 to make, but we're going to tariff you. So that if you make it in America, it costs $3,000. If you make it somewhere else, it costs $3,000, $500 if you want to sell it here. And that's what tariffs are about. Yeah, line goes down. Sure, they're not there in order to be another tax and make the nation wealthy. They're there to convince companies to come back in the United States. Because all of this shit has geopolitical implications. If you move all of your manufacturing into another nation, over time, over decades, your nation loses the ability to perform the function that the companies were making. This is why China has become very technologically advanced. Because a lot of companies from the United States and companies from the European Union, who also, due to the same reason, have left into China, well, it managed to get China to steal trade secrets, to learn the craft, to understand how it is. And they have smart people too. Like, if they get how the basics are done, if they understand the principle, then they can improve on it. And China is a competitor with the West. And so what ends up happening is, over time, you have people from Apple saying, oh, well, a smartphone can only be made in China. The United States doesn't have the technology. I'm not kidding. That was an actual statement. And the fact that I don't know if it's true or not makes me assume that it is. I don't know more than the Apple CEO whether or not you can make Apple phones in the United States anymore. He says the robotic arm doesn't exist. The trade staff isn't there. I believe him with the trade staff. Yeah, like if you have a country where you have people making phones for decades and you're a phone company, yeah, you want to go into that country because the people there are already trained. They already know what to do. And sure, maybe it is possible that the United States simply lacks the trained individuals on how to make these phones. And maybe they also lack the robotic arm on how to make them. And how did we get to this point? Why is it that one of the most powerful nations on earth doesn't know how to make phones anymore? And the interesting thing is that once you had COVID, I thought most people would understand. If you guys remember during the logistics crisis from COVID, when most countries shut down, and Donald Trump decided to shut down China because at the beginning, that's where the pandemic started manifesting. What ends up happening? Well, people are freaking out. It's like, oh, well, we don't have toilet paper. We don't have masks. We don't have this. We don't have hand sanitizer. We don't have that. And everyone understood. It's like, well, hold on a little bit. Like, why aren't we making it in our own countries? Why aren't we the ones making hand sanitizers here? Why aren't we making masks here? Why aren't we making this and that in our country? And it's a great question. Why aren't you? Because if in the future, heaven forbid, we have a conflict with China, let's say they want to get into Taiwan or something, what do you do then? Do you end up not having phones? And then it's also the question of, are people really sympathetic to Apple? This is another interesting stuff that I've seen. A lot of newspaper articles, all of them are like, oh, look how bad Apple is having it. The phones may cost $3,000. Who fucking cares? Why should there be a new phone each year anyway? Hasn't the left lectured us enough about wasteful capitalism, about environmentalism, about all these issues? Like, you can have an Apple phone for 5 years without changing it. And within 5 years, you can raise enough money to have like 3,000 USD if legitimately this is how much it will cost because Apple refuses to move its manufacturing back into the United States. And by the way, if Apple refuses to move its manufacturing back into the United States, what's to stop an American phone company to making phones in the US anyway? And what they can focus on can be not necessarily making the most technologically advanced phone or the most fancy phone. Maybe they can make some functional phones. Something that has replaceable parts. Something that, okay, is not as advanced and as good as an Apple, but it can last you for 6 or 7 years. And they won't make a killing. They won't make a lot of money. Line doesn't go up. But it will be sustainable. And it will be something that people will choose to buy because they support the planet and they champion workers' rights and all the other stuff, right? Can be the people phone. Let's call it the Volks phone. No, but seriously though, why are people supporting Apple? Apple is a highly political company that decided to become progressive. They have a lot of left-leaning values. And so the question is, why are conservatives even caring about what Apple has to say in this issue? Apple's decided to play politics and they lost. They became political. It was one of the biggest companies pushing the whole left-leaning agenda. So why are people all of a sudden, oh my goodness, look what's happening to Apple? I don't care. Apple are pro-censorship. Why would I care about the censors? They corner the phone market. They often decided what gets placed up and what doesn't. I don't have any sympathy for them. Let the Hassan Pikers of the world care about Apple. Not to mention, they would probably love it if Apple costs $3,000. Because all of a sudden they can show off. That's the whole point of Apple, by the way. In my opinion, Apple is the luxury phone. If you want a functional phone that's common sense, just get a Samsung. Just get a Samsung and all of a sudden you have high-tech phone that you can do pretty much whatever you want with it. The only reason you'd get an Apple is if you want to show off. It's the luxury phone. You want to go on a date. You want to impress a lady. Well, great. Now it costs $3,000. Now she knows you're rich. Anyway, let me know what you guys think, though. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.